My mom sneered, "You'll never measure up to your brother." I rose calmly and said, "Fine, then let him cover the bills. I'm done sending money." My mom froze, stammering, "What money? We've never gotten $1 from you." So, I pulled out the proof. By the first page, her face drained of color. My mom stared across the dinner table, smirked, and said, "You will never be as good as your brother." Everyone laughed like it was a joke, like I should just swallow it the way I always do. My name is Alexis Carter. I am 29, and for years I have paid their bills in silence. But that night, something in me snapped. I pushed my chair back, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear myself. And I said, "Fine. Then tell him to cover everything from now on because I am done sending money." The room went quiet in an instant. My mom blinked, confused, then narrowed her eyes at me like I had just insulted her. "What money? Alexis, we have never received a single dollar from you." She said it so confidently that for a second, I almost questioned my own memory almost. I just looked at her and felt every late-night transfer, every emergency payment, every time I chose their bills over my own life, slammed back into my chest. I work with numbers for a living. I live in spreadsheets and reports. I know exactly where my money goes. So when she tried to erase all of it with one sentence, I realized this was never about forgetting. This was about pretending I did not matter. I took a breath and told her, "If you really want to say that, I guess I will have to show you because I kept everything, every transfer, every note, every so-called little favor. I had the receipts, all of them printed and waiting. And when I finally laid them on the table in front of my family, my mom went pale before she even finished the first page. If you want to know how that stack of paper blew up years of favoritism and turned the perfect golden boy story upside down, stay with me until the end." Before the day, my mom went pale over those receipts. It was supposed to be just another Sunday dinner at my parents' place in Tacoma. The kind of thing we had done so many times, it felt less like family time and more like a routine. I was expected to show up for. I left my apartment in Seattle late that afternoon with my laptop bag on the passenger seat because my dad always had one quick thing he needed help with online and a container of homemade chocolate chip cookies sliding around in the back because my mom always said mine tasted just like the ones her mom used to make traffic on. I-5 with slow brake lights stretching out in front of me and the whole drive down. I found myself mentally scrolling through my budget instead of the playlist on the radio. The automatic payments I had set up for their utilities were due that week, plus the little transfer I had done a few days earlier for their phone bill. I kept telling myself it was fine. I had a decent salary. I was good with money. This was what being responsible looked like. By the time I pulled into their driveway, Brandon's big SUV was nowhere in sight, which did not surprise me at all. Being on time was my job in this family. I walked in with my cookies, set them on the counter, and my mom, Diane, kissed my cheek with a quick distracted peck right on time. "Of course you are, Lexi. You are my responsible girl," she said like it was this cute inside joke between us. It never landed that way for me. Responsible girl sounded less like a compliment and more like a job title I had never applied for. My dad, Rick, was at the dining table with his reading glasses, low on his nose, scrolling through something on his laptop, a messy pile of envelopes, and a calculator beside him. He barely looked up except to say, "Hey kiddo, remind me later, I need your help with some online stuff." "Okay." He said it casually, like asking me to pass the salt, as if my time and brain were just part of the house inventory. Aunt Melissa was already there too, sitting at the end of the table folding cloth napkins into neat triangles and talking about a co-worker at the bank who had just gotten promoted. She smiled at me and said, "There is our girl, always working, always busy. You must be doing so well up there in the big city." In that tone, older relatives use when they assume your life is completely under control because you do not talk about your problems. For a while, everything played out like usual. Diane moved around the kitchen narrating Brandon's latest big wins, even though he was not there yet. She talked about a video he posted that got a bunch of likes, a new client. He was this close to closing on a house with how he had shown her pictures of some fancy staging and how professional it all looked. Rick threw in lines like, "That boy is a real go-getter, makes us proud," and Melissa chimed in with, "He has always had that charisma." Some people just have it, you know. Whenever my name came up, it was one of 3 phrases on repeat, like they only knew 3 facts about me. Lexi is steady. Lexi is fine. Lexi has a good job, so we do not worry about her. Steady, fine, good job. As if that covered the whole story of who I was. As if being fine meant I did not have student loans or dreams or nights where I stared at my bank app wondering how my account could feel so tight when everyone else thought I was doing great. I set the table, refilled water glasses, moved around the edges of the conversation, listening to them hype up my brother, who was not even on time to his own family dinner. At one point, my mom waved her phone around and showed Aunt Melissa one of Brandon's Instagram posts from some rooftop bar saying, "Look at him living life. He worked so hard, he deserves it." The part where he had called me last month to ask for money because a deal was a little slow right now did not make it into the story. When Brandon finally strolled in late as usual, holding a cheap bottle of red wine like it was some kind of trophy, the energy in the room shifted toward him the way it always did. He kissed my mom on the cheek, clapped my dad on the back, nodded at Melissa, and gave me a half hug while still looking at his phone. Then he launched straight into a story about a wild open house and some crazy rich buyers who might be flying in from out of state. And everyone laughed on cue, leaning in, asking questions, reacting like they were listening to a celebrity guest on a talk show. My dad clapped him on the shoulder and said, "That is my boy out there making things happen," and my mom was practically glowing. Aunt Melissa literally adjusted the napkins again, like she was setting a stage. I sat there with my plate listening, thinking about the text my mom had sent 2 days earlier asking if I could cover the phone bill just this once and the Amazon order. She had forwarded me in case you want to help with a little heart emoji tagged on like a softener. Nobody mentioned any of that. Nobody mentioned the late-night transfers that kept their internet on or the groceries I had paid for last month when my mom said prices were killing them. At one point between stories, my dad joked, "Brandon is the man of the house now. We would be lost without him." And everyone chuckled. My mom nodded proudly and added, "He just has a gift. Everything he touches turns into an opportunity." Then she turned to look at me with that same smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes when it was aimed my way, and dropped the sentence that had been hanging in the air for years but never said so plainly out loud. She shook her head like she was stating a simple fact, not a judgment, and said, "Lexi, you will never be as good as your brother." When she said that you will never be as good as your brother, it was like someone finally hit unmute on a reel that had been playing in my head for years, because the thing about moments like that is they never come out of nowhere. They sit on top of a pile of smaller cuts you pretended did not hurt. Mine started when I was 23, fresh out of grad school, working my first real job as a junior analyst, still sharing an apartment with 2 roommates and eating a lot of frozen dinners. One night, my dad called sounding more stressed than I had ever heard him. There had been a bad storm. The roof over the garage was leaking, and the repair guy wanted a deposit they did not have until the end of the month. He said it so quietly, like he was ashamed to even ask Lexi, "Could you spot us 150? Just this once. We will pay you back when things calm down." I stared at my own bank app, did the math, and said yes without thinking. Because that is what you do for family, right? The payback never happened, but the calls kept coming. At first, it was every few months a utility bill that got higher than expected, a medical copay, a car registration fee. Then it turned into a routine. I set up a monthly transfer for their power and water around $250 because my mom texted that she could not sleep when the bill was late. A few months later, I added 90% for their car insurance because my dad was tired of being on hold with the company. On top of that, there were the little things, 60 here for a Walmart pickup, there for a Target run because my mom said she wanted to stock up when there was a sale. Every time the tone was the same. "We just need help this month, sweetheart. We will get back on our feet soon. You know how it is." Meanwhile, my own life was built around their emergencies. I stayed in the cheaper apartment. Instead of moving into a place within unit laundry, I put off replacing tires that were past due because I had just sent money for their past due internet bill. My friends planned a weekend trip to California one summer, and I told them I could not swing it without saying out loud that I had wired $300 to my brother for a temporary cash flow issue so he would not lose a client. When Brandon wanted to sign up for some high-priced real estate coaching course, he swore would change everything. My mom called me crying about how this was his big chance, and they did not want him to miss it. I ended up covering the last $300 he needed, and they all thanked me like I had just paid for a pizza, quick and casual, then moved on. It was not just the money either. I spent my Saturdays driving down to Tacoma to fix things they did not want to pay a technician for. I set up online banking for my dad because he hated all the passwords. I untangled their internet when it went down. I synced my mom's phone to the TV so she could stream her shows. I sat at their dining table helping Brandon rewrite his bio for his website and polishing his LinkedIn so he could look more professional. When he got compliments on how sharp his profile looked, he never once mentioned I had written every word, and whenever anyone asked my parents how they were managing, they would smile and say, "Brandon is doing so well. He is really taking care of us. That boy is such a blessing." While I stood there knowing the automatic transfer, hitting their account on the first of the month, had my name on it, not his. The more I gave, the more invisible I felt in their version of the story. I was the stable background character, the one you do not worry about, the one who will always pick up the slack, while Brandon was the star. The golden child whose charisma paid the bills, even when my actual cash was the only reason the light stayed on. The night my mom told me I would never be as good as my brother, I smiled tight, swallowed the burn in my chest, and finished my dinner like nothing had happened. I helped clear plates, packed up leftovers, hugged everyone goodbye, and drove back. Up by 5 in the dark with my hands, gripping the steering wheel a little too hard. My phone buzzed a few miles out of Tacoma. It was my mom, Diane, texting a list like she always did after I left. Can you pick up some paper towels and toilet paper this week? Also, the Netflix bill went up again. Can you cover it just until we sort things out? Love you. A little heart emoji at the end like that made it softer. I stared at the screen at a red light and felt something inside me tilt. I had just been told to my face that I would never measure up to the son, who did not even bring a real gift to dinner, and somehow I was still the one being asked to grab basics and cover streaming. When I got back to my apartment in Seattle, I dropped my keys on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and went straight for my laptop. No TV, no shower, no scrolling, just the cold light of my banking app. I logged in and pulled up my transaction history. At first, it was just to prove to myself that I was not crazy, that I had not imagined the last 5 years, but habits from work kicked in. I exported the last few years of transfers into a spreadsheet the way I would for a client. I filtered by my parents' names. By the memo lines, I always wrote things like utilities, car insurance, phone bill, grocery run, brand, course brand, and gas row after row, filled the screen, 250 here, 90 there, 60, 40, 300, 150, over and over. My fingers flew over the keyboard as I added it up. When the total popped up at the bottom, I just sat back and stared. $26,750. That was a car that was a down payment. That was a retirement account that actually had a chance, and that was just the money I could track with clean labels and dates. It did not even include the cash. I slipped into my mom's hand when she said she was short at the grocery store, or the times I filled up my dad's gas tank. Without saying anything, I felt this weird mix of nausea and clarity hit me all at once. At work, if someone tried to pretend a number like that did not exist, we would call it what it was: denial or manipulation. Just because it was family did not make it less real. A few minutes later, another email came in from my dad. Subject line: family finances. He had attached a blurry photo of a stack of bills and wrote, "We should all sit down Sunday and talk about how everyone can contribute on a regular basis. Bring your checkbook." No mention of what I had already been contributing. No acknowledgement that my regular contribution had been quietly propping them up for years. I could feel that old familiar script starting to run in my head. The one that said, "Just do it. It is easier than fighting. You can catch up later," but this time I did not click away. Instead, I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Receipts. I went back through my banking app, my email, my text confirmations, and saved every transfer and payment that had gone to my parents or to Brandon in the last 5 years. I took screenshots, downloaded PDFs, and organized them by year. It took less than an hour because this is literally what I do for a living. But by the time I was done, I had a tidy document that told the story my family refused to see. I printed the whole thing at work the next day on my lunch break. Hole punched it and slid it into a plain black binder on the front. I wrote one word in block letters: family. When my mom texted later in the week to remind me about Sunday dinner, and added also, "We need more paper towels if you can grab some," I just replied, "Sure, I will bring what you need," but what I was really thinking was, "You wanted paper. You have no idea what I am about to put on the table." Sunday came faster than I wanted it to. I drove back down to Tacoma with a case of bulk paper towels in the trunk, and that black binder sitting on the passenger seat like a passenger with its own agenda. My mom had texted that morning, just a small family meeting before dinner. Nothing big. Love you, and added a smiley face. I stared at it for a long second, before tossing my phone onto the couch and grabbing my keys. When I walked into the house, it felt different from the usual Sunday dinners. There was less noise, fewer smells from the kitchen. The table was already cleared except for my dad's laptop, a messy stack of envelopes, and a yellow legal pad with numbers scribbled all over it. Rick looked up and gave me a tight smile. "Glad you are here, Lexi. We are going to work this out like a team," he said, gesturing toward the chairs. My mom, Diane, was pacing between the kitchen and the table, chewing, on her thumb, a habit she only had when she was worried about money. Aunt Melissa sat at the end of the table with a coffee mug between her hands, like she was there to moderate a panel. Brandon was leaned back in his chair, phone in hand, tapping through notifications, like there was nothing serious happening at all. I set the case of paper towels down by the pantry, then placed my purse on a chair, and very carefully laid the black binder on the table next to the pile of bills. Nobody commented on it at first. My dad cleared his throat and opened his laptop. "So your mom and I have been looking at the numbers," he started, "and it is getting tight, inflation, gas, all that stuff. We thought it would be good if we all pitched in regularly, make a plan. So we are not always scrambling." My mom jumped in right away. "Brandon has been doing so much already with his work and everything, and we know you are in a good place too, sweetheart. So maybe you could just formalize what you are already helping with, make it official." And Melissa nodded like this all sounded perfectly reasonable. "Family budget meetings are smart," she said. I let them talk for another minute, listen to my name, get pulled into sentences. Like Lexi has always been so dependable. We never worry with her. She understands responsibility. And then I put my hand on the binder and slid it into the center of the table before we talk about a plan. I said I need everyone to see what my plan has already been for the last 5 years. My mom frowned. "What is that, Alexis?" My dad squinted at the cover. "Did you bring your work stuff, honey? This is not that kind of meeting." I flipped the binder open to the first page, a simple summary sheet I had made at lunch earlier in the week. Each year, the total dollars transferred to my parents and to Brandon underneath a grand total in bold. Diane leaned in more out of reflex than interest and started reading. Her eyes moved down the page and the color in her face drained so fast. I actually saw it happen for a second. Nobody said anything. Then she laughed. A sharp, nervous sound. "What is this supposed to be? These are just little things. You are making it look bigger than it is." My dad leaned over her shoulder, then looked at me. "Lexi, this does not mean anything. It is just family helping each other." I reached forward and flipped to the next page. It was a printout of transfers from my bank, grouped by month March. Utilities $250, car insurance $90, Walmart orders $62, Brandon coaching course $300. I turned another page. April, May, June, same pattern. My mom snapped the binder shut with more force than necessary. "We do not need to see every little thing you have ever done," she said, her voice getting higher, "and anyway, we have never asked you for that much." I felt something in me steady the way it does when I present a report I know is solid. "Not that much." I repeated. $26,750. Not counting cash, not counting gas, not counting groceries. I bought on my card because you said you were saving. Brandon finally looked up from his phone. "Whoa, Lex. You have been keeping score. That is weird." "It is family." My mom latched onto that. "Exactly. This is family, Alexis. You cannot just throw numbers in our faces. Like some accountant, you will never be as good as your brother if you keep acting like this." There it was again, the line that had started all of this. I let it sit in the air for a moment, then I stood up, every nerve in my body buzzing, but my voice calm. "You know what I said? If I am never going to be as good as Brandon, no matter what I do, then tell him to pay the bills. Tell him to cover the power, the water, the car insurance, the phone, the streaming, the Walmart orders, the coaching courses, all of it, because I am done. I am not sending money anymore." The room went dead silent. My dad's mouth opened and closed, like he had lost his place in the script. My mom stared at me like I had just spoken another language. "What money? Alexis, we have never received a single dollar from you." She said it slowly, like she could will it into reality. Aunt Melissa shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable, but did not say anything. I opened the binder again, flipped it back toward her, and tapped the first page. "Every dollar is right there," I said. "Every transfer, every note, utilities, insurance, brand and gas brand. And course you do not get to erase it just because admitting it makes you feel bad." My mom pushed the binder away like it burned. "You are being dramatic," she snapped. "These were gifts. You never said you expected anything back. We thought you wanted to help." My chest hurt, but not from guilt this time. From anger, from finally seeing the whole pattern. "I never asked for anything back," I said. "I asked to be respected. I asked not to be treated like a walking ATM. You could insult over dinner, and then text for money on the way home. If you want to keep saying, 'I will never be as good as Brandon,' then from now on, he can be the one you call at midnight about the power bill. He can be the one who misses trips and tires and savings, so you do not have to feel uncomfortable." My dad shook his head. "This is not how families work. Lexi, families do not keep ledgers." I looked at him and felt my eyes sting, but I did not let the tears fall. Families also do not pretend. $26,000 never happened. I said, families do not rewrite history to make the golden child look like the hero while the person actually paying is told they will never measure up. I picked up the binder and hugged it to my chest like armor. I am your daughter, not your bank. I said, I will still come to dinner. I will still pick up the phone. But the money stops here. If you need help, you can ask and you can hear no. That is my boundary. Then I grabbed my purse, nodded once to Aunt Melissa, who finally whispered, maybe we should all cool off, and walked out to my car behind me. I could hear my mom raising her voice. My dad saying my name, Brandon muttering something about me overreacting, but I did not turn around. For the first time in years, I drove back to Seattle without mentally planning how to fix their problems, and that was when the real fallout started. I did not even make it all the way back to Seattle before the fallout hit. My phone started buzzing halfway up the highway, call after call from my mom. Then my dad, then Brandon. I let them all go to voicemail. The notifications stacked up so fast my screen looked like it was glitching. When I finally parked outside my apartment, I sat in the car and listened. To the messages in order, my mom's voice was high and shaking. Alexis, how could you embarrass us like that in front of your brother and your aunt? You made it sound like we are using you. We are your parents. We are allowed to ask for help. Call me back. The second one came 5 minutes later, angrier. If you wanted appreciation, you could have just said something. You did not need to make a scene and start waving papers like some lawyer. This is not a courtroom. This is family. Then my dad's voice, tired and disappointed. Lexi, that was uncalled for. Your mom is upset. Brandon is upset. You made it sound like we are bad people. Nobody forced you to send money. You chose to. That is not a debt. That is you being generous. Families do not keep score. Brandon's voicemail was more blunt. Seriously, Lex, what the hell? Who prints out 5 years of bank statements? That is psycho ex-girlfriend behavior. It is a couple $1,000. Get over it. You made mom cry. I deleted that one. Halfway through over the next few days, the tone shifted. The first round was outrage. Then came the gaslighting. My mom texted, I really think you are exaggerating those numbers. It could not have been that much. You must have added wrong. You are stressed. That is why you are seeing things this way. My dad sent an email with a spreadsheet of his own listing a few times. They had bought me school clothes years ago. A used car they helped me with when I was 19. Closing with, we have done more for you than you realize. Maybe we should all be grateful and stop putting price tags on everything. Aunt Melissa called to set up coffee. I almost canceled, but curiosity won. We met at a Starbucks not far from my office. She slid into the seat across from me with a latte, and that tight smile older relatives get when they are about to be honest. Honey, she started. I get where you are coming from. I work at a bank. I know money can be stressful, but you cannot treat your parents like clients. They're just floundering a little. You are doing well. It is natural. They lean on you. I stirred my coffee and let her talk. She lowered her voice. Your mom is really hurt. She says you threw everything in her face like she is some kind of freeloader. She is crying a lot. Maybe you could apologize for the way you handled it and then quietly keep helping until they get back on their feet. You will make the money back. Family. You do not. I stared at the foam on my drink and felt that old guilt flicker, the one built on years of being the dependable one. Then I pictured that $26,000 total on my page, the way my mom's face had gone white before she slammed the binder shut. I am not treating them like clients, I said finally. I am treating myself like a person whose work and money mean something. Melissa sighed, like I was being stubborn. Just do not let pride cost you your family, she said. I drove back to my office and sat at my desk, my heart heavy and my hands shaking. For a second, I almost opened my banking app to reset the automatic transfers just to make the noise stop. Instead, I opened a different tab. I canceled every recurring payment that had my parents' name in the memo. Utilities gone, car insurance gone, the monthly grocery top-up gone. Then I set up a new automatic transfer, same total amount, but this time from my checking into a separate savings account labeled me. I opened an IRA I had been putting off for years and scheduled a small monthly contribution. The numbers on the screen were not big, not yet, but for the first time in a long time. They were pointed toward my future, not just patching holes in someone else's. The backlash did not stop just because the transfers did. My mom started posting vague statuses on Facebook about ungrateful children, who only see dollar signs and how some people forget who raised them. A couple of my cousins liked the posts not knowing they were about me. Brandon posted a selfie in his SUV with the caption, "No one is coming to save you. Hustle or go home." The irony made me laugh out loud in my kitchen. At the same time, real-world consequences started to show up. My dad accidentally sent me a photo of a shut-off notice for their internet, meant for my mom, before following it up with, "Sorry, wrong person. Ignore that." A week later, my mom called in tears because the power company had given them a final warning in the past. That would have been my cue to log in and fix it. This time I said, "I'm sorry you were dealing with that. Have you called them to set up a payment plan and then sat in the silence that followed?" Brandon texted me one night, "Need a quick 300 to lock down a staging company for a big listing. Promise I will flip it back next month. Big commissions coming." I stared at the message for a long minute, my thumb hovering. Then I typed, "I am not sending money anymore. Remember?" and hit send. He replied with 3 eye-roll emojis. "And guess the receipts changed you. Good luck when mom cuts you off." My chest hurt after messages like that, like someone was pressing a thumb into a bruise. There were nights I lay awake thinking about their house, going dark, about my mom, pawning jewelry, about my dad picking up extra side jobs and wearing himself out. But then I would think about all the nights I had skipped dinners with friends to hit their due dates, the trips I had not taken, the savings I did not have, all so they could keep pretending my brother was carrying them. A few weeks in, the evidence of their adjustment became more obvious. My mom mentioned in passing that she had sold some of her old jewelry online. Your dad said, "I should not, but what choice do we have?" She sighed, waiting for me to take the bait. I did not. My dad picked up a weekend job doing maintenance for an apartment complex. He complained about the drive and the extra hours, but he did it. Brandon stopped posting quite as many flashy nights out, and started posting from open houses and coffee shops. Instead, word got back to me through a cousin that he had lost a potential client because he could not front some staging costs, and the buyers went with another agent. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I started to feel different too. I used the money. I would have wired to them to sign up for a basic gym membership and a cheap yoga class. I went on runs after work along the waterfront. Instead of sitting at home refreshing my bank app in dread, I took one of my closest friends out to dinner and did not mentally calculate what that money could have covered at my parents' house. The guilt never completely disappeared, but something else started to grow alongside it: relief space. The sense that I was finally stepping out of a role I had never agreed to play. The more their anger and guilt trips bounced off my new boundary, the more I realized that this was the real revenge, not the binder itself. Not starving them, not punishing them, but forcing them to live without the invisible safety net they had built out of my silence. And as the weeks turned into months, the calls about money slowly turned into something else, or in some cases into nothing at all. Months passed, and the screaming in my phone finally faded into a kind of uneasy quiet. The first thing to go were the long, angry voicemails. Then the guilt-soaked texts slowed down. Eventually, the notifications from my family were mostly pictures of my parents' dog in a Halloween costume or a blurry sunset from their porch with captions like, "Thought you would like this. Love you." There was never an apology. Not really. Nobody said, "Hey, we were wrong to pretend your money did not exist." But something had definitely shifted when I drove down to Tacoma for dinner. Now the house looked a little different. Some of the nicer decorations were gone. The cable package was clearly basic. No more premium channels. Playing in the background, my dad, Rick, talked about his weekend maintenance job at the apartment complex, like it was just something men his age did nothing to be embarrassed about. My mom, Diane, mentioned a part-time position she had taken at the local library. Just a few shifts a week, shelving books, helping people find things. She said, waving it off, but I could hear the strain and pride mixed together. For the first time in my life, my mom was swiping a time card instead of my account. Brandon toned down the influencer persona a little. He still posted, but the flashy dinners and expensive gear shots were replaced with open house tours and behind-the-scenes clips from showings. At one family dinner, he complained about having to pick up a few shifts at a coffee shop between slow months. "It sucks. But whatever, grind is grind." He said nobody called him the man of the house that night. They talked about all of us figuring things out, and when the subject of bills came up, everyone looked anywhere but at me. On my side of the fence, life got quieter in the best way. The money that used to vanish into emergency transfers started to stack up my little me savings account. The one I had set up the day I canceled the auto payments actually grew. My IRA contributions ticked along in the background. I joined a local running group and made friends who knew me as Lexi, the woman training for a 10K, not Lexi, the daughter who always wires money. I updated my resume, took a certification course my company paid for, and got serious about my own future instead of just holding up everyone else's. One weekend I finally booked that cheap California trip I had told myself I could not afford for years, standing on a beach I had only ever seen in other people's photos. I realized how small my life had become when my parents' bills were the center of it. I still go to Sunday dinners, sometimes I still answer the phone when my mom calls, as long as the first words out of her mouth are not about due dates. I set rules for myself that I actually keep now, simple ones like no opening my banking app after 9 p.m., and I do not send money in the middle of a conversation. If someone asks for help, I tell them I will think about it and look at my budget later. Most of the time the answer is no, and I let it be no without an essay. I do not hate my family. I never did. I love them. I want them to be okay. But I finally understood that loving them and funding their denial are not the same thing. My mom can think whatever she wants about who is as good as who. My worth does not live in her sentences or in a stack of unpaid bills. It lives in the life I am building for myself. One choice at a time. I will always love my family, but I will not let anyone turn that love into a bill ever again. And if you are listening to this, thinking about the times you have bailed out people who never even said thank you, maybe ask yourself the question I avoided for years. What would your life look like if you finally stopped paying for their version of the story and started investing in your own? For more interesting stories, please like, share, subscribe, and press the bell icon for upcoming stories.